it's not aesthetics anymore. It's about an idea or a purpose or a means to change that company or bring that business to life.
And that's what creativity is. There is no rules.
When in their lives, going to work, being a lawyer or a doctor or engineer or whatever, were they creative? And now suddenly they are. So technology has allowed them to do that.
Asking yourself, is the job I'm learning right now still relevant in 1 year, for example?
And one of the things, I guess, the challenge that we face is that the reality we live in here is probably 18 to 24 months ahead of what is out there for us.
We're pushed right to the edge of what we think is our capacity. And then you realise you can just squeeze a little bit more.
Burnout is like a standard thing, right? You sign up for a burnout.
I wouldn't want to be in a corporate environment where I do 8 hours, kick my heels, look at a grey wall, and do that again and again and again. I think you have to be fueled by something more than a career.
Welcome to part 2 of the DixonBaxi interview. In this video, we ask 2 very important questions. We ask how the guys circumnavigate the highs and the lows at the studio. We ask how can we motivate the next generation. I think these are very important questions during very uncertain times at the moment, and the answers are not what you would expect. So without further ado, I suggest that we sit back, relax, and jump into the second part of the DixonBaxi interview.
All right, so highs and lows. So building on what Si was saying, I guess more specifically, it's the thing we think about is looking into the future, right? So time slows down the further you look, right? So the further you look, the more time you have. And I have this really random analogy, which is around driving on a racetrack, right? Let's say you're driving around Silverstone and you're in your Formula One car and you're going 200 miles an hour and you're coming up to a corner and you hit the brakes, but you don't know what the next corner is. So you're like, oh my God, I'm on that corner. And then you accelerate, and you become so reactionary because you don't know what's coming up. But if you kind of zoom out of that and look down at the track and learn the track and look ahead, you can see the next 5 corners.
Yeah.
Okay, which then slows time down, which allows you to get a driving line, and suddenly you can be strategic. You can talk to pit lane and so on. So the analogy is just simply that one thing we're good at, and as Simon especially, is just looking ahead and seeing how the chips may fall. And then also scenarioing. Well, if this happens, what is the worst case scenario? What is our threshold? What is that bottom line? And then how do we build from that? So that's kind of one way of doing it, like a practical way of thinking about things, scenario. And then the other thing is we tend to make things. Like we're kind of constantly on the proactive. So rather than just kind of sitting on our hands and going, we're not getting work, a lot of it is around building relationships. It's not just visibility for the sake of it. It's trying to impart ideas or stories or what's really happening in the studio. And one of the things, I guess, the challenge that we face is that the reality we live in here is probably 18 to 24 months ahead of what is out there for us, right? So, I think a lot of studios have that. They're sitting on work, they're working on work. And so our future is in here is slightly different. So what we want to do is make sure we can get what's in here out there as quickly as possible to realize that new future and get more of it. And that's what we constantly try and do. So I think we see that as a positive challenge and a way of storytelling. But I think you have to construct your new reality.
There's an interesting thing building on the racetrack thing. It's a really beautiful idea. But the other thing is, if you're Lewis Hamilton and you go to a racetrack you've never driven before, there's an innate skill having practiced thousands of times that when you hit the corner, you have a decent idea of what's going to happen.
Right.
And I think it's a combination of both. One is looking forward strategically, but the other is building a very high tolerance for difficulty and change. So it's a practice thing.
Right.
And once you get to that level, when you're kind of hitting the edge of the corner, you're like, well, the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to spin off. And I felt what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I hit a wall and blew up, that would be a real shame. I'd be dead. But that doesn't happen often. So you're pushing yourself to the, I guess, to the edge of your comfort zone all the time. And that's what we found in our careers, that sometimes we're pushed right to the edge of what we think is our capacity. And then you realize you can just squeeze a little bit more. And if you keep doing that, eventually you hit a corner and you go, it's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it wasn't going to be as bad as I thought it was. So I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, I'm going to nick that.
One of my
I
favorites.
might steal that as well.
Feel free.
Yeah.
It's open source.
Right.
He's got a whole Willy Wonka thing next.
Yeah.
All right. Next question will be about the next generation of creative people. So in Germany, actually, the creative industry has not a great reputation, mainly because of advertising agencies, where you don't make a lot of money and you have to work a lot, compared to working in a big corporate just go home every day on time.
Burnout is like a standard thing, right? You sign up for a burnout, and
That's the reputation of the creative industry, and also
advertising, not the whole.
it's more the advertising agencies in Germany, yeah. And then also like the whole, like what's happening right now, AI. Just asking yourself, is the job I'm learning right now still relevant in 1 year, for example? So the question would be, how do we motivate and excite the next generation of creative people to become part of our industry?
Yeah, I think also, just to add to that, especially like this uncertainty of, why should I learn to craft a logo? Why should I get into the anchor points, the details, the nuances? Why should I have this knowledge, this reference, all these kind of things, when it comes to typography or grids or layouts or whatever, when maybe, I don't know, next year, some kind of AI tool will be doing it for me. How do we keep these people actually motivated,
Well, they should motivate themselves.
Yeah.
You described two really interesting, completely different things there. I wouldn't want to be in a corporate environment where I do 8 hours, kick my heels, look at a grey wall, and do that again and again and again. There's a completely different type of burnout. That's like basically crushing and destroying your soul. So I'd rather be much closer to the flame and risking maybe getting a bit burnt out, but living life to the full and being fulfilled by being a creative person. So I think the risk of being over-geared far outweighs atrophying some shit job for money. So I work for work's sake. I work for the creativity. I don't work for money. Obviously, we get paid and things. It's really important. But I think you have to be fueled by something more than a career. You have to be fueled by the fulfillment of being a creative person. And I think that gets you through difficulties. When it comes to something like AI, if you think about it, there's a feeling or a moment when you create, isn't there? Like you feel it here and you feel it here as much as here, don't you?
Uh-huh.
The flow. There's that thing in your heart, in your stomach, that you come alive. We were working last night and full of adrenaline and fucking about, and like I felt it. It was like really exciting, and you don't ever lose that feeling. And you can have that if you're prompting. You can have that if you're making something out of claymation. You can have that if you're crafting like the Swiss guys. It's entirely up to you. It isn't either or. And the reality is it's coming anyway. So why not just embrace it, see what happens? Because what will happen is the new technologies, in the way that happened when I went from analog to digital, or the world went from no social media to social media, the world will learn how to deal with it, and it'll be good and bad. Some people will lose their jobs, but millions of other people will get new roles. Some people won't like the change, and other people will embrace it immediately. The smart people will anchor themselves in the middle, and they'll look at what is the kind of transient stuff, and what's the fixed permanent stuff? What's the things that really matter to me? And what are the things that are exciting me at the edge? And they determine the bit in the middle, and that's where we stay. So we learn from what's kind of turning over the trend-based stuff, and you're like, yeah, let's see what's going on. I'm not really sure that's going to live. But the fixed things, the things about craft and value and originality and idiosyncrasy and humanity and ideation, they're fundamentals, and you can apply that to anything. So we stay in that kind of middle space where you're kind of learning from what's new, but you're using what is fundamental to inform that. And then you decide as it happens. None of us know what AI is going to do to our industry, but it'll be good and bad, in the same way that social media and digital technologies and the Industrial Revolution were the same. fundamental change requires change. So we might as well be part of it.
Yeah, I think, look, it's a super exciting time to be around, with all of this stuff going on. And I agree. I think, those root principles of, you talked about grids and type and craft and so on are critical in understanding the artistic qualities of expression and how you tell stories and communicate. Those things are not necessarily going to go away, because we're still talking at this point still to humans and people, and the world is changing fast, but there are billions of people across the world that don't necessarily live the same lives as us. They're different forms of communication. AI is not necessarily going to solve everything, and that's all in the digital sphere. But what about the physical realities? And of course, there's mixed reality and AR and all of this stuff to come, which is very exciting. But from a pure design point of view, I mean, we're doing work with some local schools, the 15-year-olds that come here, and they don't even know this exists. So although they might be on TikTok or Snapchat, they might express themselves creatively through that. And that's a great example of an entirely new medium. If you think about those people at home just kind of doing those amazing jump cut edits, cooking a meal, when in their lives, going to work, being a lawyer or a doctor or engineer or whatever, were they creative? And now suddenly they are. So technology has allowed them to do that. But if you think about this next generation, they come here and they're like, no way, I could do this. And so that's something.
The other thing as well is it's an education thing.
Yeah.
The thing with these technologies is it's giving access to people who didn't currently have access.
Right.
So an individual anywhere in the world, in Lagos, Mexico City, in Toronto, in Japan, can take these technologies and make whatever they want. They can make sounds and animations and typography. They don't need to know anything to do that. They can use their heart and their minds to create. And that's what creativity is. There is no rules or no right or wrong way of doing anything. Obviously, some of us who are educated a certain way or had certain backgrounds believe that's the best way. But half the world doesn't give a fuck about that. They want to express themselves. So what's exciting about this is it's democratizing access to creative expression, some of which is applied professionally, some of which is what Paul's talking about. It's just pure expression. So there's never been a better time to create because it's democratized. It's an incredible time. And I think there's more creators in the world than there's ever been. So this idea that people are not creating is just a myth.
Yeah.
Millions of creators. Yeah. Everyone's a photographer now. My mother's a photographer.
Yeah, she has a phone on a camera, I would imagine.
She's using ChatGPT and stuff. It's bonkers.
But but then, if you think about the craft terms of jobs and so on, sure, everyone's a photographer, but not everyone is a professional photographer, right? The art of composition. Like if I put stuff on Instagram versus someone else who's been doing it for 2 decades or has just an intuitive quality of taste and style, it's the same kit, right? Doing something entirely different. And I don't think that's going to go away. And we kind of did this pyramid drawing where, at the bottom is sort of just shit design, it's just the commoditized stuff that's out in the world all the time, that kind of washes over us. And then you push up into kind of the systems-based design. And, working in that digital sphere, there is a sea of sameness because data says that actually it helps people and we're all kind of conditioned to use things a certain way. But AI could eat all that up because you can, Figma can just spit out the atomic components of a system and it can type, I want a well-being app, let's go, But you move up, and how do you create originality? How do you create excellence? Then how do you create craft? And then as you start to move up, you still have to realize that you are at certain point still taking people on a journey. So if you're working with founders in a smaller business or a global organization with hundreds of people, they all have to believe in something. It's not aesthetics anymore. It's about an idea or a purpose or a means to change that company or bring that business to life. And so you kind of get to this top of this pyramid where it hopefully pushes everyone upwards. And then, this pyramid goes this way and suddenly there's this burst of opportunity. And, I was having a conversation the other day with a colleague of ours and we were talking about, technology, mixed reality, and how surfaces can, through different substrates, suddenly become textural, volume control, and so on. So what's happened is that we've been conditioned to this 16:9, 9:16 format. But as human beings, we're in the world.
But that conditioning is only 15 years.
Exactly.
We weren't conditioned. So prior to that, no one was conditioned to that. How long did it take them to get conditioned?
Well,
by 12 months?
12. Yeah, it's just like boom.
How long did it take everyone to get conditioned to remote working when COVID happened?
Instant.
2 weeks?
Exactly.
We have great capacity for change.
And what's going to happen, the world's going to come open again, right? We're going to start dealing with surfaces and so on. So
it's also,
I guess to summarize it, I mean, it's pretty on optimistic.
It's a taste thing. It's a taste thing. If you made something, I made something, and other people made something, you decide what you like versus what you like. So ultimately, the truth will out. Great creators, whatever the technology, will do better work than not great creators. That's always going to be the case. And it doesn't matter how it's manufactured ultimately. It's going to mess us up. But the thing is, if you take all of your existing experience and knowledge and the things you care about and then apply it to the change, at least you'll be part of it. Because none of us know what's going to happen in 24 months. And if it gets really bad, we're going to have much bigger problems in design. We're going to be into Terminator. The Boston Dynamics robots will be pottering around.
We have one here watching.
I know, yeah, exactly. It's just like,
that's that bullshit reader.
Great, it's off the chart.
It goes off and say, yeah. Once we get into the second 10-minute slot on one question, it goes, woo.
Yeah.
But also, I just kind of picking up on some of the things that you're using as well, the terms that you're using. Like my whole career, I've always struggled with the idea of me as a designer. Like when somebody asks, what do you do? I say, I'm a designer. And you see this kind of blank. And I also don't really know how to answer that. It's just this this word that sits in front of me that allows me to be placed or positioned in some way. There's so many different ideas and facades and ways to what that actual thing is. And I also, heard you using the word creator as well, over the idea of being, back in the day we were graphic designers. Sure. Nobody even uses that term anymore, which I think is also quite a shame. I still like that graphic design.
Well, when I started, we were commercial artists. It's all the same thing. Yeah. It's just semantics. It really doesn't matter.
But I think it's just interesting how the vocabulary has changed over the years to kind of not necessarily fit. It's just become.
Maybe it's more open-ended, and the creator economy and all of that. It becomes buzzwords. But I the idea that anyone can create and anything becomes a creation, and we've got platforms to share that for good or bad. That's quite exciting. And suddenly,
but ours is applied creativity.
Ours is applied. It's different.
Lots of people are making things creatively because they enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about is applied creativity.
Yeah.
And design is the engine of that. We're in communications. We're not in advertising. So we create communications systems that are highly intuitive. They're interactive and they work across digital and real world spaces. So that's a hyper-connected system, to steal a title there, and it's very, very complex, and it's living and breathing. So you need intelligence to drive that.
Yeah.
Some of that intelligence can come from technology, and some of that intelligence comes from humans. So our work is driven by insight, and we use lots of technologies and human mind power to take insights and translate them into design systems and tools that are useful to people. Mm-hmm. So that's applied design, and that's where we are. So design is just the architecture and structure of how we do our job. And you can call it lots of different things, but on a fundamental level, the basics of it are not that complicated. It's this translation of ideas or strategies into a design system that creates a communications platform for something.
Cool. Thank you. Now I'm going to get into the really deep, difficult questions. All right, so you guys face obviously stress and challenges and the whole kind of the daily running of what you're doing here. Is there any kind of rituals that you guys perform?
A sacrificial one.
Either sacrificial, I have down here ice baths, meditation, scaling a mountain, skydiving, you know, the usual, right? Is there anything that you do outside of work to kind of help like this kind of balance to kind of keep you in check?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have a one thing of many things that kind of, I always carry a camera. You'll find me with a camera all the time. So yeah, I take photos of things, but that allows me to see the world differently. So I always see the world in frames, in moments, and it allows me to see things that I wouldn't see. So I love photography for that reason, and it's a way of, it's interesting actually, although we live in a creative environment, and actually this company is life for me and us, I guess, being creative, walking around the street is a release. So it's kind of it's weird actually. More of it is actually better for me. And, you know, then the regular things like playing video games, and there's certain things that I'm like, you know, totally into on certain platforms. I collect things. Vintage video games is one thing. So nostalgia is a big part of that. Watches, you know, you guys have some very interesting ones. So those things are great. And then, you know, outside of that, it's just, you know, the weird thing is that creativity is actually, or making things is a release for me. It's kind of the inverse of what you might expect.
I feel you. Yeah. Sometimes my wife tries to get me to calm down. For her, it's like the state of nothing is kind of serenity, and it's the opposite for me. Like I can't. Sometimes it's quite good to anchor me back down. But I need
I have to draw, I have to write, I've got to know, I've got to do things.
There's two different things at play there, because one is the type of person you are, the other is work-life balance. So like the type of person, some people might need solitude, and I think that's quite an important thing, you know, a chance to reboot. Other people like to be a kind of, you know, always on engine. And there's a personality type, but work-life balance is a kind of construct of traditional working versus not working. And I think if you're fulfilled in what you do, your vocation, then it just bleeds into everything. So that's why things like burnout and overworking and stuff, I can manage that expectancy because I'm doing something that I choose to do. Mm-hmm. So I don't see it as work. It's hard. It is hard, definitely. But then it would be if I wanted to run, you know, 100 meters under 10 seconds. It'd be really hard to do that. But I like the challenge. I have a couple of things that I do. I have work sci and home sci. So I switch work sci on when I come to work. Okay. Usually when I'm having a shower, if you...
Do we picture this?
Yeah, don't picture that. You can put that up.
Get some B-roll for us.
Yeah, and that cut.
But I do home sci is much quieter, much more reserved. But I learned early in my career that I needed to project myself differently to engage people, to communicate, and to be able to share what I do. So I switch myself on. The other thing is I read. So I'm trying as much as possible not to binge watch. I don't have any social media. I'm not on social media, so I don't have on my phone or anything. So what I do is I try to read long form, and particularly about behavioural things, science, physics, things about what makes the world work on a deep level, because I find the roots of all creativity flow through those big ideas, some of which are philosophical and some of which are kind of pure fact-based science. And I find that a great tonic. But I also use some of that in my thinking when I apply it to my creativity.
Guys, I have one thing to ask of you. One small favor. If you are liking this video and you're enjoying the content that we're creating, please hit that subscribe button and like the video. Over half of you guys are not subscribed as of yet, and we hope to change that. But the more who subscribe and like the video, we will be able to create better and more content just like this. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate the support. So if you could do us that favor, we would highly appreciate it. So we're actually come to the end.
It's only been 8 hours.
Yeah, flew by. But I want to say thank you very, very much for your time. An absolute inspiration as well. And for us as founders, it's great to see other people being so vocal and being out there and following, you know, your beliefs. It also helps us as well. And it was, I think, 15 years ago now, I moved to Hamburg. Do you want to get our little gifts?
Right.
Yeah, 15 years ago I moved to Hamburg, and there's one thing that Hamburg is synonymous with, and that is the football team there. I know you guys are into football.
Is it?
And
shit, man, that's cool.
This is St. Pauli. Did you know St. Pauli? So St. Pauli is the ultra left-wing football club.
Wow.
They're super sick. Everyone loves St. Pauli over there. This is where I live. I live in St. Pauli, and we wanted to bring a little bit of Pauli goodness.
Very happy with that.
And home. I mean, it's classic. It's sick.
That is amazing. Thank you both.
To both of you, you know, so we can bring a bit of what I've taken and bring it back to you guys. Hopefully you can wear that with pride. Hopefully it's not too big. All right, cool. Yeah, that just about wraps it up for another episode of the Brand Review, talking with founders. Thank you so much for joining us on this extended edition, listening to us waffle and discussing the industry and find out a bit more about the guys behind DixonBaxi. So if you've not, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us continue to grow the channel. Like this video, share it with other people that you think are going to be interested. And as for now, we will say goodbye, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.
Peace out.
So we're going to go for have a shandy, eh?
I'd absolutely love a couple of lemonades.
Yeah, do you mind if I just check in with the team on that thing we were talking about? No, we booked a table at a rough pub. Yeah. It's spit and sawdust. But yeah, if you don't mind hanging tough for a bit, I'll be back.
Yeah, we're good. We need to pack up.
Yeah, okay. Do you need any help packing up? You sure? I'll be back.
Okay.